Before the end of this hour, we will go to the kitchen and get some live reporting from the kitchen on what's going on First Take with Chris Mad Dog Russo on a Wednesday and Stephen A. Smith. We hope. We've been disappointed a couple of times because when you blow this hot as a torch, sometimes you need days off. John Oliver's show doesn't work every week. They work a lot, 60 hours a week. To 70, 80 hours, the writers, to put together whatever it is, a half hour of
some
television.
Some of those people work 80 hours a week, not everybody.
Yes.
But on First Take, they come out, and it's just a blowtorch, and we can't get to it fast enough. But before we do that, I want to go over a couple of things in review, Stugotz, because I aired on Monday not pitting Chris Wittyngham against Scott Van Pelt on the Masters Monday, which is a day we all solemnly gather around and pretend to care about golf, all of us. Like we all just like, let's talk about the Masters on a Monday. Scott Van Pelt is so tired of doing this car wash. Yeah, everybody wants to come talk to me about what a glorious time I had at Augusta. I don't like the egg salad sandwiches. It's wonderful. It's manicured. And Wittyngham blasphemed against it. Because Wittyngham, and he's been getting torched all week long by everybody.
Deserves it.
He has crossed the line, and he has desecrated a cathedral for all time by saying the Masters is a glorified putt-putt course, and saying furthermore, those greens where you putt, you hit the ball 3 inches, and it flies around in loop-de-loop 70 feet. That's not golf. That's bullshit, turbo, putt-putt nonsense.
Ball going through a windmill.
It's one green, the 16th green at Augusta. That's really the only
There's
green.
more than that. There is more than that. Where you're playing the putt going one way. I saw one where literally the guy putted parallel to the hole.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is that? Like
That's giving yourself the best chance to hit the putt. That's what it is.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is that every other putt, yeah, maybe there's some big breaks or you're trying to play it down a slope one way. It's not that exaggerated. Like, is the course not long? Like, I don't understand why the greens have to be this absurd.
Because the course is difficult. That's why. It is long, and it's difficult. Yes.
But, like, in the other court, like, in the U.S. Open, it has notoriously, I guess you'd say, high scores because they, like, that's the goal of the tournament. The goal of the tournament is to be as annoying as possible.
The U.S. Open.
Right.
Yes, and the Open Championship.
They have incredibly thick rough and, you know, like some narrow
Make the
greens.
court maximum hard.
Exactly.
Make the course maximum hard so that guys like Stugotz, duffers, or whatever it is that you call the people who like to play and think they're good, but then watch on a course and see golfers feel like they feel. Like, see, the course is hard. The course beats you. I know you're great and everything, but look at the rough. The rough here is up to you. It's up to your neck. Go ahead and do something about it. It's ridiculous. It's what it is. But it's for golfers to laugh at golfers.
100%. That is the goal of the U.S. Open is, like, try it on for size when it's, like, on a Saturday afternoon for me. But, like, there's just something about the way that those greens play that's not real. Like, that's not how greens play.
9
in any
guys,
other context.
9 people, 9 of the best golfers in the world shot under par on that course over 4 rounds. 9!
I mean, we're talking about a championship course here, and the object is to get as close to the hole as possible in this situation, right?
Right.
No, but it's not, though. The goal is to put it 60 feet to the right of the hole so it can roll down a hill so you can have a makeable birdie putt.
That's beautiful. I was sitting right next to Stuart Sink. He put it in the exact right spot when he hit that hole in one. You have to land it in the exact spot, let it funnel down to the hole. That's golf, man.
Stu, I realize what's happening here.
What?
Whitty doesn't get it.
Yeah.
It's about the pageantry.
Mm-hmm.
It's about going with your dad who's never seen it before, walking the course. Who cares if you hit a parallel shot to a hole? It doesn't matter. You're there at Augusta.
This
You're
is
there
not
at
It's about the azaleas.
jacket somewhere.
Yeah.
Marty Smith is running around.
Oh, Marty.
What Whitty is saying is he does not appreciate what you're calling degree of difficulty. He's saying is bleeping with the laws of time and physics and gravity of I don't want to play funhouse mirror golf where I think I'm hitting it this way, but I've got to take all these calculations into effect because I'm not hitting it this way. The ball is now going a crazy other way, and this doesn't have any, this is more like sorcery than it is like golf.
Right, and I understand they play the same golf course every year, so they have to figure out a way to make it novel and hard and difficult. And this is the way that they've chosen. But it's it's an artifice. It's not really how that got, like, they've built it
Chris,
over time.
They've chosen to make it difficult with water, with sand, with difficult decisions to make on the course. Do I go for this hole in 2? Do I get there in 3? Do I lay up? That's how they made the course difficult.
And you can also make a course difficult by putting an alligator at the end of a hole.
Yes!
And having it go through the alligator and out the other side.
So if 100 of the best golfers in the world, PGA golfers, went to a mini golf course, how many do you think would finish under par?
I think there'd be a few that wouldn't. I think Bryson DeChambeau, with his inability to putt, could potentially finish over par at a mini golf course.
That's fair. That's why he doesn't do well there, by the way. Good point.
I just love the idea that this show, of all shows, this is a bridge too far. I'm sorry, but whatever your opinion is on sports, we as the show that no opinion on sports matters. This opinion, I'm sorry, Witty, you're going to have to take it back. It's too ridiculous. This is the one. You will not desecrate how hard it is to putt with a stick, a ball across a green, and infringe upon the pageantry that is Stugotz's liquor-sponsored emotional trip with his dad.
Elijah Craig Bourbon, Dana.
To Augusta. No, but I appreciate the sponsor as well. I just love that the father-son moment was soaked in bourbon.
So do I.
That the sponsorship that made you go to Augusta and believe these things in your heart about this sport. But Wittyngham thinks that just recently, because you said this is the greatest thing you've ever experienced, but he thinks that you experienced something even better in sports just this week with something he sent you. That the feeling that you had this week was better than whatever you felt at the Masters. Because what did you send him, Witty?
Yeah, I have this news service that sends me like a bunch of articles and stuff that I could read, and it was behind the ESPN Plus paywall. The 7-round, all 262 pick mock draft for the 2022 NFL Draft. Wow. There was some guy at ESPN that projected the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds of the NFL Draft. So Stugotz knows who his team is taking in the 5th round.
That someone is Jason Reed, by the way. He did this, and God bless his soul. He has the Jets in the 5th round taking Michael Wright. How about that cornerback? Can't wait to play right or wrong with him. I mean, that is going to be a doozy. Right or wrong, you get it, Dan?
Yeah. Well, I didn't get it at first, but then I was just amazed at what a Da Vinci Code riddle it was. The way that you laid
out,
if Jason Reed is right, the tapestry, right, and then you could play right or wrong with him.
It never ends because Stugotz saw before the show, and I think you were there, Dan, where he picked up a Paul O'Neill book and he goes, Paul O'Neill or no Neil? Want to do it, Bill? Stupidity?
Did you book him?
I thought to myself as that happened, that can't be real, that the way that he decides on guests for Stupidity are whether he can play Paul O'Neill or no Neil with them. That the entire construct is the laziest possible thing, and then it's just thrown over his shoulder with a Billy, can you get him? And so the pitch becomes difficult for Billy on how it is to sell. Hey, Paul O'Neill, I know you've got a book coming out, and can you play O'Neill and no Neil with us?
The way it works is if he says yes, it's O'Neill. If he says no, it's no Neil, Dan. How about that? I mean, wow.
Thank you for explaining that.
You get it?
Do you see, by the way, Paul O'Neill is part of the Yankees commentary team, but he is not doing the games from Yankee Stadium because he's unvaccinated. So it's Michael Kay, David Cohn, and Paul O'Neill from his home in Ohio.
No Neil on the vax, huh?
No Neil on the vax, no Neil on the broadcast.
Paul No Neil.
Wittyngham, yesterday you were inundated, and I love that you, before the age of 30, already have your legacy-defining signature as a broadcaster. Because yesterday, during that, it was a fun night of basketball. The Timberwolves, here come the Timberwolves, said Stugotz. They're a fun team, and they win even though Karl Anthony Towns gave them nothing, fouled out. They win anyway because they're a fun young team.
Cat.
And he was terrible last night.
Yeah, he was terrible.
God.
But they win anyway. They win, and they beat the Clippers. And the Kawhi Leonard thing, man, he seemed to have screwed up his entire body. Like he kind of was telling us something really weird happened in San Antonio, and now the Clippers are.
Well, he seemed fine in Toronto.
But you say fine, but he was kind of dragging his leg, and he was amazing.
To a championship.
Yes, like Stugotz. Thank you, Stugotz. Yes, Kawhi.
This Kawhi Leonard guy bothers me. Is he hurt? Is he not hurt? Can he play? Can he not play?
Not hurt. He's very clearly hurt because he's not playing.
Yeah.
It's been out for a year.
I mean, I'm clear on his body seems to have betrayed him. Regardless, that was the second most interesting game last night because Kyrie Irving starts 12 for 12, and at the end of the game, Kevin Durant is this unstoppable thing that there's no one ever who's played basketball who could stop him from getting a mid-range jumper. Now, either he makes it or he doesn't make it, but there's no one stopping him from getting it.
He was so good last night. Had 11 assists as well. You wanted that in the first round. No one wants that.
Oh, no,
the Celtics are not happy about this.
I want to watch wonderful basketball with stakes. That's scary. That's excellence. And I do want to see the Miami Heat play a basketball team that has not one but two players who are better offensively than anybody that they have. I do want to see what that looks like.
I do wonder, though. I think those two guys were 21 of 31, Durant and Kyrie Irving from the field. If one of those two guys is off, who's going to pick up that slack?
I will say, though, in the first quarter, Stan was pointing out on commentary that Kyrie and Kevin Durant were not getting shots up, and yet Brooklyn still got out to a lead.
Yeah.
They were up 20 after the first quarter because Bruce Brown was hitting shots, Nate Claxton was rolling to the rim. Like, they were getting something out of those guys, but the second that dried up, it's actually kind of surprising how close that game was late.
It was, and Stugotz asks where they'll get some more points. They will get them from Curry. They will get them from Brown. And Brown will get them easy because of the way the double teams don't affect Durant and Kyrie at all. Where you saw at the end of that game, when the Nets needed buckets to make it not a scary thing at home.
Yep.
I mean, yes, Durant hit a couple of mid-rangers, but that was Brown. They were getting right to the rim just because the terror on the court of we've got to keep Kyrie and Durant, the both of them, away from the basket, and that requires and you can't. Even with your double teams. And so you got Brown in the paint just laying things up easy.
Yeah, and like he's kind of in those when they used to double team Steph in Golden State, he would get the Draymond 4-on-3 out of the pick and roll, and he makes good decisions. But I found more interesting that Brooklyn were trusting him to make good decisions. That's the smart thing to do, but you're also putting the ball in the hands of someone who is obviously much worse at offense than Kevin Durant and Kyrie are.
Bruce Brown has turned into a really good role player for them too because of the game that he plays. Kevin Pelton had a great article on ESPN talking about how the little big man is now the new thing in the NBA, where you have a guy who's 6'4" who can almost play power forward and play that pick and roll game and then get you to the basket really easily.
At the end of that game, Stugotz, what was a pleasure for me to watch, and I'm going to enjoy what our basketball coverage ends up being over the next couple of months because I believe we have a couple of voices that you're going to hear today on Big Suey and Amin and Tom Haberstroh, who are part of a very small, knighted community of basketball insiders who really know what they're talking about when they're watching some of these games. And the part that's exciting to me about listening to them and watching what you're watching right now is the skill level is impossibly high on what you're watching. I know that Barkley wants to dismiss Cleveland as a mediocre team, but what they were doing at the end, fighting, and the way they were moving the ball, and the way and you got Markkanen. You're terrified that Markkanen is going to just start hitting threes because the skill level on all of these people is so high that it requires Durant and Kyrie Irving to be like, holy shit, 12 for 12. Reminding you of their greatness in the first round to push off a young team that you're watching their skill level and you're like, oh, these young guys can play too. They're super skilled as well. And now it just keeps escalating, right? Because Barkley's saying he doesn't think the Nets have any chance against Boston. But the skill level of how Boston is playing, moving the ball, and the unstoppable nature of Tatum makes you wonder, will two guys be enough to knock off a team when the Nets play the Celtics?
It's going to be interesting. I think people aren't really factoring this in enough. I think that Robert Williams being out is big for the Celtics, especially in this series, because those guys are going to be able to get to the paint much easier than they normally would against that
but
team.
Boston is still great at defense without him.
They are.
And so the difference between Boston, I believe what we were looking at, the difference between Boston that couldn't get past Miami and a Boston team that I believe was going to be the growth of Tatum combined with the defense of Williams. The thing that Brad Stevens did differently than Danny Ainge is he locked up Williams for value and everybody. And he did a bunch of other things.
Yep.
But he got Williams for value and realized, okay, we can be great defensively. But they're great defensively without him as well. Not as great, Stugotz, but they have been by leaps and bounds better than the Nets have been all like the entire second half of this season.
They've been better.
The Celtics have been with Williams best in the sport good.
They have. It's going to be an interesting series. Dan, this series has everything, especially for me and you. It is Jason Tatum. Can he become the next Kevin Durant like I told you he would a couple of years ago? Kevin Durant, can he win a championship? I mean, all of this has all the makings. It's going to be a fun series.
Can he win a championship?
Well, we'll see as a lead guy, We'll see.
I began to talk about this some yesterday, and I still want to get to what happened on the broadcast with Stan Van Gundy because Chris Wittyngham is now associated with just one thing before the age of 30, which is the penis. You think it's
congratulations.
It's word association. You think Chris Wittyngham, and you just think the penis. And he has been a bold and pioneering broadcaster who went on the air and promising us he would do so. Let's stop with the discomfort around nether regions and playful laughing and jocular insincerity. Let's just anatomically correct. Let's be scientifically precise. And when someone gets hit in the junk during the play, just say he got hit in the penis. Last night during the game, Goran Dragic hit somebody in the penis, and Stan Van Gundy did an uncomfortable dance that was unbecoming for a 63-year-old grown man who didn't have facility with words at all because he was afraid of the penis.
I will say, I think Brian Anderson went reasonably far. I think he said, got hit. Oh, God, I'm trying to remember the exact word that he used, but he used something that was reasonably close. But Stan stammered his way through it.
It was embarrassing.
Yeah.
How is Stan 16 years older than Lou Bega?
What?
It doesn't seem possible. I still can't get over this.
I'm not certain we're right.
I think we read the internet wrong. Stugotz, you owe $5. You were here during one of the breaks. You were here during one of the breaks saying that you did not read the internet wrong, and then you told a bunch of lies. But we have now confirmed that Lou Bega is indeed 47 years old. Confirmed.
I went Lou Vega, Vega. That man is 47 years old.
He went out of his way to make us think that he, I don't want to say was not German, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Tony thought he was I think he was trying to make us think he was Hispanic.
Oh, Lou Bega was absolutely running a long con on age, culture, all of it. The whole thing. One of the many shocking things we've learned today is that Mambo number 5 seems to have been a cultural appropriation. That this German was out here pretending like he was a Latin Lothario who was older when he was a young man. He was a young German man. He was practically
What was the goal?
He was practically Aryan, and he was playing off as if he was Hispanic.
Whoa!
I mean, we're having fun, Dan. What's happening?
Yeah, take it easy. I have an update here on First Take. I see Stephen A. Smith. I do not see Christopher Mad Dog Rizzo.
No.
Is he holding out? Is he holding out?
We need to pause. We need to take a break. We need to restructure the end of the show. We were just waiting for this to start. And now another Wednesday disappointment. I can't keep happening. Can't have this keep happening.
I think it's legs and that's a tongue twister, by the way. I think that's legs and Jay Williams for the NBA playoffs. I think that's what Stephen A. is doing
But
today.
Mad Dog is used for the NBA playoffs. He's here to provide a historical perspective.
How are we going to hear about Havlicek?
Yeah, exactly.
Do I seem happy about
Irving
this?
did last night compared to Hondo?
I mean, look at the set. I mean, I
What
don't know
would
what to
Jerry
tell
West
you.
have done?
Yeah.
79 Blazers.
Yeah.
Boo! I'm sorry. I'm booing the TV because Jay Williams is throwing his hands up in celebration. And Jay, not today, my friend. Don't rub it in. We want to see Mad Dog. Okay?
No tie for Stephen A. as well. Casual Wednesday for him.
He doesn't respect the other side of the table. I'm just going to say it.
He'd suit up for Mad Dog.
That's right.
When you said 79 Blazers and I looked at the set, I thought it was 79 people wearing Blazers on their NBA coverage. Because they brought in Legler, they brought in Jay Will, they brought in a bunch of people to maximum cover the playoffs.
Legs. That doggy loves the 79 Blazers. He does. I mean, it's one of his favorite teams of all time.
But not an all-time great team.
Not an all-time, exactly.
No.
Stugotz, I do think that storyline-wise, and basketball has been consumed by storylines. Wittyngham has watched this for an entire season and still doesn't know how he feels about Russell Westbrook. He's watched for an entire season. This season began with Haberstroh and Amin telling you that's a terrible trade. The Russell Westbrook, they'd be better off just not adding anybody than adding Russell Westbrook. They think they're adding a star, everything's going to fall apart, and then it underachieves beyond any reasonable measure. Wittyngham still doesn't know how to feel about Russell Westbrook, but because the sport is consumed by storylines, I believe that we are headed into the impossible situation where the Nets, anything they do is more interesting than anything the Suns do. That the Nets losing, the Nets winning, the Nets game to game are a form of theater because of their stardom. That even if they're like 500, but because it's trolls and it's Kyrie Irving saging places and Kyrie Irving unvaccinated, that they're just an amalgamation of junk that arrives in the playoffs that feeds some of the stuff we like better than great Suns basketball.
I think of all the storylines in this NBA playoffs, the Sixers, can the Bucks do it again? All that stuff. This is the storyline. Can a team that's barely played together, traded away James Harden, the guy they traded for isn't playing yet, can that team come together from a play-in game and make a run to an NBA championship? Because they have two stars that are so good at what it is that they do. And I think for me, that's the intrigue. Dan, that is storyline number one in these NBA playoffs.
You also have the Simmons factor. You mentioned the fact that he's not playing, but as a storyline, he's probably as interesting as anybody in this NBA season, despite the fact he hasn't set foot on the court.
Yeah.
But I guess not to go full Stugotz, but like Chris Paul, one of the greatest players of this generation, not having a championship is, I think, a really interesting thing with Phoenix. It's just, I guess, compelling that Devin Booker has not done enough to be in the zeitgeist in the same way, because he's also a great player. But, for whatever reason, their great players are not as nationally compelling.
No, let me stop you here, because we are in the process of how those things end up being so, even though you'll only give so much credit to Giannis for being droning excellence, and an interesting story, but not the kind of personality-driven storyline that we're talking about that has the humanity that Kyrie and Durant have, because they're flawed heroes and you're rooting against them. And, oh, shit, Kyrie just stuck it in our beak there. 12 for 12 to start the game. And not easy shots either. 12 for 12 and difficult, contested, absurd shots.
Haberstroh made a great point on Big Suey today where he's like, I think defenses should just stop trying with Kyrie, because it seems like the harder you make it, the more likely he is to make it.
So what, just leave him alone? I mean,
just leave him alone. Just a half-hearted contest, maybe follow him. But
I guess the floating fadeaways and traffic over arms that he banks off of the glass,
incredible.
It's why I don't like banging. Okay, there's a lot to bang on about with Kyrie Irving. He left Boston in a terrible way. He has not been a good teammate over the course of his career. The vaccine stuff. There's been so much to talk about. But when he's in big games and he's healthy, he is as fun to watch as a player that there is in this era of basketball. But just from the difficulty of shots that he makes.
But the place that I want to stop you guys, because this is how guards change in the league, literal guards sometimes. Phoenix and Memphis might just give you unbelievably great basketball in a little while, where a whole lot of people are going to learn, oh shit, Devin Booker's made even another jump on how good he is. And John Morant is something like that's just crazy as young people come for what remains of the previous kingdoms of Durant and and
LeBron
and LeBron and Steph. But this is via Kevin Arnovitz, okay, as part of the Nets story. Sources say that much of the discontent between James Harden and the Nets started in September when he arrived into training camp out of shape. Durant had been understanding of Harden's predicament in Houston as a man in need of new scenery, but also tacitly expected his former teammate to commit himself to conditioning and self-care when he came seeking a title in Brooklyn, according to a source close to both stars. With Irving's status already in flux due to his unwillingness to get vaccinated, Durant was astonished in the opening weeks of the season at Harden's lack of explosiveness and sluggish play, something he attributed in large part to Harden's being out of shape, as he did the ensuing hamstring issues.
At least he played. I mean, his friend Kyrie Irving didn't think the season was important enough, or Kevin Durant was important enough to take a vaccine so he could play in every game.
Harden, sources say, found Durant's slant grating and self-righteous. The two never resolved the conflict, and there was little that teammates, Coach Steve Nash, or General Manager Marks could do to mediate it.
General Marks.
So as you see what some of the backstory and soap opera is with the Nets, Stugotz, I don't know that Phoenix and Memphis can play basketball that is excellent enough to rival what is all of that. The sparks around, is Kyrie really going to make us eat it? Because you tuned in last night.
Yeah. That
was not to watch Cleveland. That was not to watch the Nets advance. I don't think many people tuned in hoping for the Nets to advance. You're hoping
it was to see if the Cavs cover the plus 9.5.
That too.
Yeah, and they did.
But
back door.
But will they be embarrassed? And then you're watching the beginning parts of the game. And no, of course the Nets are going to do that in a playoff game. Cleveland's not ready. Cleveland's not ready to be one of these teams that comes for Durant stuff. But Booker is. Tatum is. I don't know if the Heat are, as Jimmy Butler gets the Michelob Ultra commercials.
Right.
Jimmy Butler and his agent have capitalized on getting to the finals once and building a team around this is Jimmy Butler's superstar Miami Heat team. But they head into these playoffs with a guy who's got commercials, who most people listening to this don't think is in the stratosphere of some of these other people that we're talking about, and is on the tail end of it. And whatever the Miami Heat have left will be expunged, wrung from Jimmy Butler's body over the next 18 months.
It's interesting because I'm kind of wanting Durant to succeed here so he could see what I've been saying all along. You didn't need Steph. You didn't need Clay. Like, this would be a great example of what I've been saying, because he can be the lead guy on a team from the play-in game who can't play any defense during the regular season. If he could take a past Boston.
That's a big ass, though, Stugotz.
It is a big ass, but he could do it. He's the greatest player in the world right now.
He didn't need Steph. He didn't need Clay. He just needs the most versatile guard any of us have ever seen.
Yeah, but just one of them.
Stugotz, there is no such...
He would have won with Russ.
Stugotz, he can't do it by himself. LeBron was great this year by himself. You can't... In the skill level of today's NBA, there's not a guy who could do it by himself, and if there's anything close, it has to look like Giannis. It has to be surrounded by what Giannis is surrounded by. Well, okay, he's the best one, but he's going to have a whole lot of people bailing him out in defensive situations. Like, it's not one guy anymore. That's not winning you shit anymore.
Well, it also never did. But is Stugotz's point that there's like a certain level of second guy that's like not Steph Curry, to where like it's an acceptable level of second. Everyone for the entire history of the NBA has needed a second guy.
Not everyone.
Well, this was about joining a team that Dan told me was the best team he had seen before Kevin Durant got there.
Dirk Nowitzki did not have a second guy, and the Pistons of Chauncey Billups didn't necessarily have a second guy, but usually
they had five guys who were the second guy, but not a first guy. They didn't have a first guy.
Yeah.
Chris Middleton is
a team of second guys.
Yeah.
Or Giannis is the second guy, as Chris likes to say.
And Holiday's the third, right?
I find really interesting like how Brooklyn are still rated. Like, if you look at the advanced number systems, if you look at our soulmates at DraftKings Sportsbook, the series price for Celtics Nets is Celtics minus 130, Nets plus 110. They're basically saying it's a toss-up.
But it's because
it is, though.
But
it's not. Like, if you look at the entire regular season, from start to finish, second half of the year, even at full strength, Stugotz, even at full strength, you compare the Celtics at full strength to the Nets at full strength. The Celtics are a better team. But inarguably, they have home court in the series. They should be minus 200, minus 250, in my view. And yet, you just respect those two guys so much.
But Witty, the bench shortens in the playoffs. So if I put all the players from the Celtics and all the players from the Nets on the court and said choose sides, the first two guys going are Kyrie and KD.
But how many of the next
you're playing
7 or 8
guys.
I know, but how many of the next 7 or 8 are Boston's?
Let's not do the math that way, because what Witty is saying is correct from this angle, Stugotz, and it simply can't be disputed, because money. When gambling is involved, you saw this with Tiger over the weekend. Those odds were not as good as they should have been because people just feared that they've seen him do it before.
Yes.
And what's coming in on the Nets isn't based on much of anything you've seen this season. It's
based on fear.
It's based on just those two human beings, and you're like, okay, I've seen enough basketball to know that those guys can be great enough in 4 games to the two of them score 95 points in a game 4 times against the Celtics, and then the Celtics are eliminated. Like, that's what ends up happening to the bet, where you're like, yeah, I've seen those guys be great, and they can, and Kyrie could start a game last night making 12 of 12. But what Wittyngham is saying is true. If I just made it uniforms and gave you no history and made you watch those people play basketball together this year, you'd say to yourself, why the hell is anyone talking about the Nets possibly beating the Celtics? You like, what basis is that other than I fear Kyrie and Durant? They are trolls who might be fueled by just enough hatred to tell me you can bleep off, we're going to be so great that we're going to knock off the Celtics. And you know why? It's because Kyrie wanted to sage the place and enjoyed stepping on the leprechaun, and still laughs about the fact that Big Baby Davis said he'd never forget that and he'd remember it forever.
I mean, like, there are arguments you can make, though, for Brooklyn, right? So when Kyrie and Kevin Durant have played together this season, they're 11-6. Their offensive rating is 123 when they played together on the floor, which is astronomically higher than the best offense in the league. Boston, since they've lost Robert Williams, their defense has dropped off 5.6 points per 100 possessions, which is still good. It just goes from first in the league to 7th in the league. But last night, Bruce Brown gave voice to their strategy of, we're going to go after Tice, we're going to after Horford. They're not going to be the same guys without Robert Williams, and they feel like they have a chance.
And then Kevin Durant came on after him after the postgame, and they were like, hey, Bruce Brown said you guys are good with the Celtics. He's like, what? What is Bruce Brown doing?
Guillermo, put it on the poll. Did you learn that Rondo was a Cav last night?
I did.
What?
Yeah. Dan, I know we're all rooting for the Heat down here. I get it. I understand
rooting
it.
for the Nets last night.
But the series you want to see, is it not, in the Eastern Conference Finals, I think, or at least the country wants to see, would be the Nets and the Sixers, correct? Like, and if Ben Simmons is playing.
Oh my God. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, but not if Ben Simmons is not playing.
No, he has to be playing, right.
But let's step a step back for a second on what Charles Barkley was saying last night, because he is saying the Nets have no chance against the Boston Celtics. And I know Charles does some of that. But what we've seen this season, Stugotz, from the Nets has been wildly unimpressive. But the reason they have captured what will be increased ratings for the playoffs is you need this team to advance. You don't want the Nets knocked off in the first round by the Celtics.
I mean, the Celtics advancing, it's a big market, Dan, and a team that a lot of people care about, but you're probably right. You want the Nets to stay around for as long as possible.
It's just such a mutant team for our times because, Stugotz, when I'm watching that game last night, and this is Stan's analysis, okay, they're headed to the fourth quarter, and Durant's going to sit for 2 minutes, and this is what Stan is saying as a veteran coach. He's saying in those 2 minutes, Cleveland's got to make anyone other than Kyrie from the Nets make some shots. And what you see of basketball is such a distortion when Kyrie and Durant are on the court together, because those other 3 guys don't matter. Like, those 3 guys can be, I feel offensively, you're saying, I want to see what Brown and those guys give me. And maybe in the playoffs, they'll start missing shots. But the quality of shot that they were getting late in that game because Durant and Kyrie, you're talking about, Stugotz, It's I can say to you, one of them is the most skilled offensive basketball player I've ever seen and not be talking about Durant. Because of what he can do when you watch him in the videos, dribbling with each finger and the handle that he's got and the touch around the rim that looks like basically no guard you've ever seen.
It's extraordinary. Like, again, if we're just talking about this as watching basketball, Kyrie Irving is so fun to watch. And when he had it going last night, like he did 12 of 12 from the field, felt like everything was going to go in. It's only what happens when the Nets start to run offense. I mean, in some respects, it might be not in their best interest to run offense, because the second they move a screen, they're probably going to bring Bruce Brown's guy up to the screen. They're going to double team the ball handler. And the reason why the other guys matter is because if they do that, then the offense is in Bruce Brown's hands. And that's an extraordinary amount of pressure that he's going to have.
I know what you're saying there, but last night it was in his hands in the paint, and he was just doing a couple of little floaters that didn't require much of him. He might miss them, and you might take your chances with, okay, fine. Can you beat me, Brown? I'm going to double team Durant and Irving. But what I'm telling you is that when you're watching them play, you have such historical offensive greatness on the court that is totally unstoppable with double and triple teams. Players, if not without precedent, as great as you've ever seen from a skill level, they make the game so much easier for the three other dudes on the court. It's why Joe Harris ends up leading the sport in 3-point shooting last year. Like, it's just, they collapse everything because you're not talking about merely greatness now. You're talking about two guys that have offensive games that simply can't be stopped. You just have to hope that they go 5 for 17.
And you got nothing from Seth Curry last night. I mean, nothing. Literally nothing. No points. 0 of 4.
That's an important dynamic. Yes. If his ankle, I mean, they have, 5 days now in between winning the play-in and their Sunday night matchup with Boston. If he can get any semblance of healthy, the 4-on-3 situations we just talked about become a lot more terrifying when Seth Curry's open in the corner.
They need him. That's why they traded for him. That's why he had to be in the Harden package. They wanted somebody who was a clean shooter.
But I love that they can kind of blow through the, 82 games together, chemistry. They're coming together right now, and they're trying to make a run for an NBA title.
But Curry is hurt.
Yes. Yep.
And you're asking me who's going to be the third guy? Is it? And I'm talking about.
It should be Ben Simmons at some point.
But it's not going to be Ben Simmons. He's not going to fall out of a parachute and just end up playing NBA playoff minutes. So it'll have to be. Is it going to be Drummond going 9 for 9 on dunks?
It can't be that every night. He was 7 of 11 last night.
Him or Claxton.
Really?
On dunks.
Just dunks.
Just throw it up near the rim and see if they can dunk it. Just to see if the double teams and if your defense just collapsed so much that somebody can grab the ball and dunk it.
Boston have to be better at defense than what Cleveland offered at times last night. That for me is the dynamic, because you mentioned Cleveland, they were described as mediocre. They ended up with losing the play-in, and we'll see if on Friday they can make it as the 8 seed. Their last 27 games are 9-18. They have fallen off without Jared Allen.
Who's coming back now?
Right, Ricky Rubio got hurt early in the year. They tried to replace him with
Colin Sexton got hurt
with Rondo. Colin Sexton is hurt. The team in January for Cleveland would have given Brooklyn. First off, they wouldn't be in the play-in, but second, they would have given much more to Brooklyn last night.
Cavs, Hawks, or Hornets? Who do you want? Dan wants the Hawks. We know he wants Trae Young. He wants to be nervous.
I want the Hawks too, just because you want a little bit of fun, but you still feel like you can take care of the Hawks. Although I did see they have a turning point in their year when they've
been better in the second half.
They're 17-9 in their last 26.
Yeah.
I would say that one of the very cool things about these playoffs that you're headed into, and it's one of the things that the Nets capture, because basketball doesn't do this very much, and it certainly hasn't in the era of the super teams. Basketball stinks as giving you surprises. And the idea that we're talking about a Nets team, wait a minute, you mean there's a mystery team that's just floating out there that's not really any good and throughout history would never win the title as that kind of seed because it's not good enough, but they're just floating out there in an era of you don't trust the Suns and the rest of it looks an awful lot like parity. You have no idea what's coming out of the East, even though basketball usually will just give you 1-2, 1-3. It's not an actual surprise anywhere, but here the Suns have been better than everybody.
Yeah.
The entire season. They've been
2 seasons
far and away the most consistent team in the league. And if they were to win it, it should not be a surprise, even though Stugotz would have to eat it on Chris Paul. And Stugotz is here basically rooting for nothing else in the playoffs other than Chris Paul chokes again.
Yes. Well, that's accurate. You're right.
That's the only thing that
he will.
that you're rooting for. And if he does, then you've got a free-for-all.
Yes.
If he does, you've got just who the hell is going to win the title? I don't know.
I want to see Ja Morant in the finals, man. Like, I think people would be excited about seeing Ja Morant in the finals. You guys don't?
I think basketball fans would, but that's what we're talking about. It's the crossover from what basketball fans know and care about. Like, I think a lot of basketball fans last night appreciated more than what Brooklyn did, what Anthony Edwards did. You know, taking over from Karl Anthony Towns having a terrible game, D'Angelo Russell, like people who care about basketball. There's a 20-year-old kid last night that led the Timberwolves. You know, like they couldn't do anything without Karl Anthony Towns.
Who's not afraid of anything,
not
right?
afraid of anyone. Is an incredibly exciting player. Like as a dunker, is as fun of a player that's entered the league. But Minnesota doesn't have crossover appeal.
But by the way, can people get off the Timberwolves for celebrating like they won a championship last night? Like they did win a championship last night. That organization's been around for 32 years, and one time they made it past the first round.
They did win a championship last night.
It felt like a championship in Minnesota.
It was a big day for A-Rod. We can agree on that.
Wow.
Right? He was the big winner last night, wasn't he? I mean, people thought he was down in the dumps. Michael K was making fun of him when they did that K-Rod crossover thing the other day where he was saying it's a big weekend. People got engaged, throwing that out there because J-Lo and Ben just got engaged again, Benifer, and now they're looking for houses. I've been meaning to
ask you.
Yeah.
I
was surprised at that level of banter, by the way, from Michael K. That's a big shout.
A little comfortable.
That's a big shout. That's a big shout on opening day.
Yeah, by K.
There was an A-Rod moment. You didn't go to Billy. Is that what you're upset about?
It's not the A-Rod. It's not the A-Rod moment. It's that we allowed Benifer to bring love back.
That's not love.
Again, we allowed Ben Affleck and Jada to learn from all their previous mistakes. And after A-Rod very publicly lost J-Lo by way of recultivating his image as a disgraced sports superstar who can now be a pop star because J-Lo has elevated him, he must be heartbroken to see that she's run back to an old love. And I needed to get Billy's, 2 minutes.
He knows that's not real also. That's the thing. This is just, I don't put Benifer's business out there. This is just for the rags. Exactly. Yeah, this is just to sell some magazines, have the Paps follow you around, or Pops, I guess. I think Paps something else. Have them go around and kind of take pictures of you, sell some magazine. It's not going to work out. Let me go on record and say I don't think that it's going to work out. I don't think love is real.
Shot at love. They've learned so many mistakes. I imagine A-Rod is hurting a little bit. That this is to someone who's this ego-driven, who comes from the hood in Kendall. I believe that.
But his T-Wolves won. I mean,
that's right.
He was on the. He was on.
He turned him around.
Side.
Some would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
He got some healing last night, turning the T-Wolves. Here come the Timberwolves, led by A-Rod's new ownership. Biggest win in franchise history since Kevin Garnett.
To Billy's point, people love getting engaged but never getting married.
That's the thing.
Like, you guys be engaged for 10 years. It doesn't matter.
Commit or don't. Shit or get off the pot. You know what I mean? Like,
get
enough
married.
with this whole... Let's stop celebrating engagements, okay? Like... We have more rings than Tom Brady at this point. Let's get married already.
Let's get married.
And then we'll, celebrate the wedding, and then we'll see if love is love or if it's not. But I'm just tired of this. I'm tired of the celebrations. And I have another question, speaking of paparazzis that we were discussing. I saw pictures that appear like Jeff Bezos and his new love were out to dinner with Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson.
Oh, God.
Does the second richest man in the world not have better things to do than go out to dinner with them? Like, I don't want to take shots at them, but they don't strike me as particularly interesting. Like, you could have dinner with absolutely anybody in the world. Like, he just wants to be a celebrity at this point, right? Like, that has to be what it is.
He wants to be a supervillain of the world, and then what do you do?
Rich
What do they talk about at dinner?
Exactly.
That's
Kanye.
a great question. You think they talk about Kanye?
No
at dinner?
chance. No.
I think that's probably a bit of a sore subject, as would be whatever it is that ended up with Bezos getting divorced, because a sex scandal emerged there, and then a whole lot of money took, a whole lot of money changed hands, and it was a scandal that ends up Bezos. I did not have him becoming more of a superstar because, at least in part, he ended up in the rags. But rich people do like to be more famous than they tend to be, and I don't imagine that Bezos is an exception there.
I legitimately think that each side of that table was asking the other one, how do you do it? Like, Bezos is asking Kim and Pete, like, how do you do it? How do I get more of this? And they're like, well, how do you do what you do?
But, Billy, don't you think there's a part of Bezos that says to himself, like many, many years ago, there's no chance I'm ever sitting down for dinner with Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson, and now I am because I'm Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, but who cares that they're? I mean, it's wildly. It's
kind of what I would want to do if I were Jeff Bezos.
The things Bezos has done that are impressive, cultivating a dinner with Kardashian and Davidson.
Top of my list.
If I poke Wittyngham a little more, Wittyngham is going to say, I wouldn't want to be at that dinner. I'm not interested in sitting at that table.
I would have a great time at that dinner. I'm actually I'm with Stugotz on this one. Because,
hold on a second.
No,
yeah.
What?
Just
what would you do at the? Walk us through your participation at this dinner. Are you
wearing a suit?
Yeah, what would happen?
I would definitely wear a suit.
I mean,
that goes without saying.
You're the only guy in a suit.
It might be a waistcoat sort of
They
night.
might give you their order. Getting confused.
But you'd just be observing, right? You wouldn't be asking questions.
Oh no, I would be listening and asking questions. I just don't know where to begin because I've always found with famous people, like, do you want to talk about the thing that made you famous? No. So be like, hey, read any good books lately? What are you watching on Netflix? And then you go just like, because like you're trying to be a person. You're not trying to be a star bleeper in that situation. However, in agreement with Stugotz, like if you're that rich, you would just be like, who can I have dinner with?
Right.
And you set it up and you do it. I just wouldn't know where to begin because, like, you don't want to start asking Kim
you
Kardashian
you wouldn't
about
begin with Kardashian and
empire,
Davidson.
her empire. I wouldn't want to ask Davidson about SNL.
I mean, he went to space with
friends.
Shatner, Dan. He's doing fine. I mean, yeah, thank you.
You're talking to them like they're people. These people aren't people.
Yeah.
They're simulations that we pictured in our minds. They're not real people.
So what would you lead with, Tony? If you're like, all right, Davidson and Kardashian, where are you leading the dinner conversation with? What's your opener?
Waiter comes up. I go, Dom for everybody. I'm this guy. Point at Bezos.
That's the maximum annoying thing. Like, that is just so bad.
Let's keep.
No, I don't want any more of this
idea.
dinner. No,
Really?
This is exactly like Tony would introduce himself and be like, just give me tons of money with the most expensive of champagnes. I'll fit in here totally, just authentically with you guys. I just want to go back for a second to what Stugotz said, though, because I think he thought he was making a good point when he said Bezos, he's fine. Was that a good point you thought you were making, that Bezos' life is...
I mean, he's choosing his, he's a billionaire, Dan, who has the ability to do whatever he wants with whomever he wants, whatever he wants, and he went to space with Captain Kirk. I mean,
He didn't, though. He sent him to space.
That's unfortunate.
I just don't understand
Should've went there with
what
him.
the point was.
Final frontier.
That